far we have seen the implementation of the we have seen the details of the auth handler and the request handler components of this trading system. Now it's time that we take a look at the order manager component of this trading system. So right now on my screen you can see the declaration of a class which has the name order manager, and this is used to implement the order manager component of this trading system. So this is the declaration and the different public members that we have in this class. We have some public functions. The first one is a constructor. The second function is a function declaration, which is used to place an order. And we have another function declaration or method declaration, which is used to get order book for a particular instrument. Now we also have some private data members, and these are a reference to these are used to hold references to instances of auth handler and request handler. Since this order manager relies on these components to authenticate itself and to make HTTP requests. Now let's take a look at the implementation of these methods. So the first we have at the top the implementation of the constructor. So the constructor has two parameters, and these are basically references. One is a reference of type auth handler, and the second is of type request handler. And these are going to take as arguments the references of the instances of auth handler and request handler. So the private data member auth handler is going to refer to an instance of auth handler, and the private data member request handler is going to refer to an instance of request handler. Now let's take a look at the implementation of the place order method. So the purpose of this method is to place orders for different instruments, and the various parameters of this function are the reference to the name of the instrument, and it takes the amount of that instrument for which the order is to be placed, and a reference to the type of that instrument, and at last we have the price for that instrument. So once again the details that we need to send along with the request in order to place an order, what details do we need to send along with the request can be found in the documentation of the API. So the first thing that we do here is since we already have a reference to a valid instance of auth handler class, so we are going to call this a method of the auth handler object, that is get access token, and it's going to get us the access token. Since in order to place an order we need to access an authenticated endpoint of the API, so we must have an access token for that. So once we execute this statement, we are going to check if the access token is empty. If the access token is empty, then we are going to throw a runtime exception that access token is not available. So in case we have a valid access token, then we are going to craft the JSON payload to make the request to this place order endpoint. So the different parameters and the different the different parameters that we need to specify as per the documentation of the API or the instrument name, the amount, the type of instrument, the price of that instrument, and the label. So once we have that set, we are going to specify the URL of the endpoint. And the URL in this case is this private /by. So then we are printing a test message on the console, and after that we are going to place the request. So it's a post request, and this is the URL, payload, and the access token. So the request handler component is going to handle all the other details for us. So once the request is successful, we are going to get the response in this string variable. Once we have this, we are going to convert this into JSON for easier manipulation. Once we have this converted into JSON, we are going to extract the order ID from this response. So this is how we are going to do that. And again, this can how to manipulate the JSON objects can be found in the documentation of the JSON for modern C++. Once we have a valid order ID, we are going to return this order ID to the caller of this method. In case we do not find the order ID inside the response, we are going to throw a runtime error that the order failure to place order along with the response. And at last, we have this exception handling mechanism in case any of the code throws some kind of exception. We must be able to handle that exception. So in case there is an exception, we are going to return an empty string. Since the return type of this order manager, this place order method is a string, in case something goes wrong, we are going to return an empty string. Now that is the implementation of the place order. Now let's take a look at another order management function, that is get order book. And the purpose of this function is to get the order book for the given instrument. So it takes only a single parameter, and that is a reference, string type reference to the instrument name. And it is going to return a JSON object. So once we have that, so the first thing is that we are going to construct a variable named as query params, which is going to hold the query parameters in the required order, which can be sent along with the GET request. Once we have this query parameters, we're going to specify the URL for the GET request, and that is this public /get order book. So we are not going to need the access token in order to access this endpoint. So once we have that, we are printing a test message on the console. After that, we are going to make the request, and this time it's a GET request, and we are passing the URL and the query parameters as arguments to this GET function. Once we have that, we're going to parse this response into a JSON object, since the get method returns a string. So once we have this converted into a JSON object, we are going to return this JSON object, the result from this JSON object. In case the JSON object does not contain this result key, then we are going to throw an exception. And at last we have the same exception handling mechanism as with we have seen it several times so far in this video. Now that we have seen the explanation of the order manager class, it's time that we test the functionality of this class. For that, we have written a test file, and we have a client ID and a client secret as usual, and then we have an instance of the auth handler class, and we are passing the client ID and client secret to this instance too. Then we are creating an instance of a request handler class. Now we are creating an instance of the order manager class that we need to test. Now, in order to create an instance of order manager class, we must pass a reference to an auth handler instance and to a request handler instance. So we are doing that, as we can see. So the next thing is that we are going to authenticate this instance that we have just created. So we are invoking the authenticate method of the auth handler class. Now you might wonder that we have already passed the references to the order manager class and we are authenticating afterwards. But since these are references, so the actual changes will be reflected in the order manager instance. So if the authentication is unsuccessful, then we are passing this authentication failure message, and we are going to exit. Since we must be able to authenticate first, only then we can make certain order management functions or order management functionalities. And then we are going to place an order. For that, we are going to invoke the place order method of the order manager class, and we are going to pass the required parameters, and in return we are going to get an order ID for this order. If the order ID is empty, if the order ID is not empty, then we are going to print this order ID. In case this is empty, we're going to just carry on. So the next thing is that we're going to fetch the order book. So for that, we're going to invoke the order manager dot get order book and pass this BTC perpetual string as an argument. So in return, we are going to get the JSON object for this order book, and we are going to dump that into a string and then print that on the console. And after that, we have the usual exception handling mechanism. Okay, well, and now that we have seen the testing mechanism to test the order manager class, let's run this test. In order to do that, we are going to navigate to the build directory of this project. So let's do that. Trading SY system cd build. So I have already pre-built this. We have an executable to run the test order manager. Let's hit enter and see what happens. So let's check the output of this test file. So we have got an order ID, which means the post request is successful, and we have also got the order book for BTC perpetual, which means the get request is also successful. This means that our order manager class is working properly.